So this is the trick or treat card of the Halloween Oracle, and it stands for mischief and play. And then I'll also be doing this card, which is the Underworld card, which stands for where all things pause and begin again. So in this card we see two kids dressed up for Halloween. One is a ghost and one is wearing demon's mask, but they all both seem to be dressed in, other than their Halloween, like the sheet and the mask, they seem to be dressed in their like Sunday best. The kid with the demon mask has a sweater vest and a dress shirt on, and the girl is a ghost, or I'm assuming she's a girl, but she's wearing like a flowered or speckled dress or skirt or something. But the Halloween jack-o'-lanterns, I don't know if you can see it on the video, that the ones that they're holding don't have any handles to them, so they're just kind of floating by their sides, so I don't know if that was intentional or what's going on there. Then you have two more jack-o'-lanterns on either side of them on the path, which that path leads up to older Victorian style looking kind of house. So kids, I guess they kind of fit this because most people assume kids to be all sweet and innocent and everything, but they can be little monsters at times. The ghost, obviously that's the mask, and the ghost is to hide, or if they're going to do tricks, they don't really want their identities to be known. The sheets and the mask kind of remind me of like those old school Halloween costumes, like way back when, before it got overly commercialized. And back then, the mischief and the mayhem and the tricks were actually pretty serious. That's why they came up with the trick or treating, because they were trying to buy off the kids from vandalizing property and all the rest of it. And then the jack-o'-lanterns, I guess, fits here because they're supposed to be for warding off evil spirits and all the rest of it. So maybe you can ward off the kids, although that doesn't work because I did pumpkins at my mom's place, and the kids just put firecrackers in the pumpkins that were sitting up against the house, which was not a good idea. Luckily they weren't, like, the firecrackers actually didn't go off because the pumpkin got rained in, so yeah. Or they stole our pumpkins and rolled them down the hill. The street was on a hill, so yeah. So it doesn't necessarily work in that respect. And then the house to me is a place that's supposed to be safe and where you have your privacy and it's your own little sanctuary. Halloween night, that sort of, I mean, it's not like people invade your house, but you gotta give up a little bit of that sanctuary to give candy out to the trick-or-treaters. On the other hand, it kind of reminds me of being a kid and getting all excited to go trick-or-treating, and it was the gearing up for it, but also when you went out trick-or-treating, you're walking around the neighborhood, and all the other kids are out walking around the neighborhood too. It's sort of a community thing. You get to see other kids, you get to walk around the neighborhood, and it was just sort of this event that was nice. It could also suggest what side of yourself are you or someone else hiding? Or are you confused between being more sweet or mischievous, or if somebody else is confusing you along those lines? So maybe some sort of decision of how you want to respond to someone or something. Anyways, let's see what the book has to say. Oh, this is actually a very long one. So at least this one's longer than the frickin' spider one. That was horrible. So this is, yeah. So it's Trick or Treat, which is mischief and play. And the poem is: stalking and stomping, eyes shining and begging baskets, faces and bodies that are no longer ours, laughing skeletons and candy caskets. Trick-or-treating is such a fun thing to do, is it not? Yet why do we trick-or-treat? Ancient peoples understood that there were both mischievous and perhaps nasty spirits wandering around at nightfall on Halloween, as well as happier, more benevolent spirits. They thought that if they dressed as spirits themselves, or other frightening creatures, then they would not be recognized as human and attacked. The idea of causing a little chaos as one of these spirits was part of the invitation and enjoyment of the night. The practice in medieval Britain was aptly called souling. Today, trick-or-treating is a huge event. We spend much time, money, and effort dressing up as our scariest creatures, and this has even extended to dressing up as our favorite celebrities and other pop culture idols. Instead of traditional candy apples and brambrack, we give out mind-boggling varieties of candy. It matters not, the idea of frightening away death and darkness still stands. I believe that the modern trick-or-treating also unites communities by introducing our families and friends to those around us in a non-threatening and joyful way. Many of us do not know our neighbors, even those who live next door, and Halloween gives us an excuse to not be so reserved and extend our boundaries. Should you receive the trick-or-treat card in your divination, it may be a time to examine the role of play and mischief in your own life. You don't have to be a child to let go and have some playtime, and you can extend the fun to others. Sometimes we are afraid to make mistakes, and play is one way to alleviate the pressure that we sometimes place on ourselves to get everything perfect every time. Alternatively, it is worth knowing that there is a balance between manipulation and mischief. The former is not pleasant, and the other has, at its core, a sense of irrelevant fun. So I kind of like that idea, the trick-or-treating, but I like the idea of calling it souling instead. That's kind of neat. And yeah, I agree that when all the kids are out trick-or-treating in the streets, it does kind of create more of a sense of community, at least on that night. As long as they're not like smashing your pumpkins and vandalizing your houses and stuff like that. And I like this line, sometimes we are afraid to make mistakes, and play is one of the ways we alleviate pressure we sometimes place on ourselves, and that's definitely, I agree with that. So let's see what the next card has to say. So this is the Underworld card, which stands for where all things pause and begin again. So in this card we have another skull again, but this time it looks like it has a little bit of a jaw to it. Then there's a half pomegranate there with the leaves still attached. And in the background it kind of looks like it's a wall of ice maybe, and then down at the bottom there's a river, and it kind of looks like there's maybe a town back there and some sort of dark mountains going off to the sides. So again, with the skulls, it kind of represents death, but it's also the head, so maybe like thoughts and personality. The pomegranate kind of makes me think of the whole Hades and Persephone thing. Also, I think pomegranates are supposed to like kind of represent a little bit like abundance or something like that, fruitfulness. The river kind of makes me think of the river Styx, and the frozen ice, it just makes me think of the multiple types of frozen hell that there are in lore and legends around the world. But because it's giving me this whole Hades vibe and whatnot, it's making me think of like the Xena's Hades. But the pomegranate, the more I look at this picture of the pomegranate, the more I'm reminded of how much I don't like pomegranates. They're slimy and kind of gross to me. I know there's a lot of people who like them, but this is just reminding me, the more I look at this, how much I do not like them. It's also kind of making me think, like with like the Hades and the ice there, that maybe it's a good time to check the fridge for any bad food or food that's about to turn. Or maybe it could also stand for don't let who you are die, or don't let your goals and ideas go. I don't know. Let's see what the book actually has to say. So it's the Underworld, where all things pause and begin again, and the little poem is another realm, shadow-filled, travel from death's bed, where we stop and transform within the realm of the dead. The idea of an underworld, a whole realm that we go to after we die, is a concept that crosses a huge variety of cultures and eras. The Sumerians, the Turkish, the Incas, the Greeks, through to the Siberians and the Maori and the Khmers, all had a distinct word for the underworld. It's different though as how these cultures treat this concept, whether the underworld is seen as a place of rest and rejuvenation, or horror and punishment. The Christian hell is a place of darkness, fire, and punishment. The Egyptian underworld is one of judgment, peace, and renewal. In Maori culture, it is an in-between place of waiting, wisdom, and transformation. Many Mayan myths mention the underworld often involves the concept of a place of waiting and of trials and eventual judgment. It can also be a place of joy and peace. Should the Underworld card be present in your reading, you are being asked to consider exactly what you have to do to transform your life into something that you find easier and more authentic to you. This may involve changing course, it may involve trials and tests, whilst things may fall away and your life may appear bare for a time. This is temporary. Space is being made into which you can create the new. So I like that last line that while things may not be how you want them, it's temporary, and it's just space being made for new things to come into your life. I kind of like that idea. So yeah,